Some cars were so big, so dangerous, or so insane, they had to be erased. Built in secret, unleashed briefly, and then banned without a trace, these machines were too much even for American roads. No ads, no second chances, just pure mechanical madness, silenced before the world could react. Here are 12 super banned American cars you were never supposed to see until now. Number 1. In 1960, Cadillac was not merely a car, it was an American ideal wrapped in chrome and crowned with tail fins. It represented post-war confidence, a nation at its peak, where money flowed, optimism soared, and every driveway in the suburbs dreamed of one day housing a Caddy. And among them, the Eldorado Seville stood near the top, an elegant hardtop coupe with Italian styling cues, stainless steel trim, and that distinct air of superiority that only Cadillac could manufacture. But deep within the engineering departments of General Motors, a radical idea was forming. Some said it began as a whispered challenge over coffee in the basement labs. Others claim a group of Cadillac engineers had grown tired of hearing about how Pontiac, Oldsmobile, and Buick were having all the performance fun. Why, they asked, couldn't Cadillac, the pinnacle of American engineering, build something terrifyingly fast? The answer came in the form of a one-off prototype, never intended for production, known only by its internal code, R5. On paper, the R5 package was mechanical lunacy draped in a tuxedo. They took Cadillac's 390 cubic inch V8, a large and torquey engine even in base form, and equipped it with dual Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors, a trick usually reserved for hot-rodded Chevys or custom drag cars. Horsepower leapt from the stock 345 to somewhere north of 405 HP, depending on who you ask. Torque was monstrous and instantaneous. To tame the beast, they added heavy-duty cooling systems, reinforced motor mounts, thicker sway bars, uprated suspension springs, and a custom drive shaft to handle the strain. No visual changes were made to the body, except perhaps a subtle rise in the hood from the taller intake stack. On the outside, it still looked like a pampered Seville, polished and proper, while inside, under the hood, it was a volcano on the edge of eruption. Test drivers were stunned. Reports from inside the GM Proving Grounds described a Cadillac that could roast its rear tires with just a touch of throttle. It moved like no other luxury car of the time. Violent, immediate, unstoppable. One driver allegedly said it pulled like a freight train and sounded like thunder trapped in velvet. The idea was to see if Cadillac could compete not just with Rolls-Royce or Imperial, but maybe, just maybe, with the surging tide of muscle machines. Could they create a luxury performance flagship years before the term even existed? For a moment, it seemed possible. But then came the problems. The dual carb setup generated tremendous heat in the already tight engine bay. After a few high-speed passes, the firewall was nearly hot to the touch, and heat soak caused the carbs to flood or idle erratically. Under hard acceleration, the car would lurch with a force unbefitting the Cadillac name. The once silent cabin now trembled with vibration, and the exhaust note, though magnificent, was far too aggressive for Cadillac's genteel image. Worse, internal memos began to circulate about long-term durability. The cooling system struggled, engine mounts deformed, the rear differential whined under pressure. Cadillac execs, already wary of changing their brand identity, pulled the plug before things got out of hand. The R5 project was quietly mothballed. No press releases, no internal announcements. The prototype, according to some retired engineers, was sent back to Detroit and disassembled. Others believe it was crushed, its VIN never recorded, its parts scattered. No official documentation survives. It was a ghost, an outlaw dream that Cadillac briefly dared to imagine before corporate fear buried it. Only fragments of its existence remain. A few engineering blueprints, hushed stories, a single blurry photograph, never released publicly, that allegedly shows the dual quad setup under the hood. Nothing more. Most Cadillac historians won't even talk about it, either because they know nothing or they've been told not to. And yet, the legend refuses to die. Some say a similar car was spotted at a Michigan gas station in the mid-1970s, snarling like no Cadillac ever should. Others whisper that GM brass kept the R5 locked in a private collection. No one can say for sure, but to the few who do remember the project, they speak of it in half-joking fear. It was a Cadillac that could scare you, a monster in a tuxedo. We had to kill it because it didn't know how to behave. So here it is, resurrected in memory, the 1960 Cadillac Eldorado Seville R5 dual quad prototype. A car that Cadillac built too well, too dangerously, too uncomfortably fast for its own good. A machine that broke its own rules and in doing so, disappeared. Number 2, 1968 Buick Sport Wagon GS Stage 1 prototype. A wild family machine that was too fast, too unbalanced, and too dangerous for its own good. In 1968, Buick was trying to reinvent itself. For decades, it had lived in the twilight zone between luxury and performance. More restrained than Pontiac, less flashy than Chevrolet, but not as aristocratic as Cadillac. Buick was for the respectable upper-middle-class driver who wanted comfort, quiet, and a little muscle when the road opened up. But behind closed doors, some in Buick's engineering team were no longer satisfied being second fiddle. They had the tools. The new GS Grand Sport models were proving that Buick could build genuinely fast cars. And in late 1967, GM engineers decided to try something unprecedented. They took the Buick Sport Wagon, a mid-size family hauler best known for its distinctive glass roof panels and middle-class practicality, and gave it a set of teeth. This was no mild upgrade. This was war paint on a station wagon. They dropped in the same Stage 1 455 cubic inch V8 that would later terrify drivers in the early 1970s Grand Sports. Though technically a 400 CI engine in '68, since the 455 didn't officially debut until 1970, Buick was already testing variations of the big block internally. This prototype reportedly ran a bored-out 455 mule with over 390 horsepower and 510 lb-ft of torque, mated to a beefed-up TH400 transmission and a 3.42 positraction rear axle. To help it handle, they fitted heavy-duty suspension, larger sway bars, and oversized drums, later swapped to disc brakes, from Buick's full-size Wildcat. The result was a 4,200-pound grocery getter that could hit 0-60 in under 7 seconds, quicker than a 396 Chevelle, quicker than a GTO if you launched it right. And in a straight line, it was ferocious. But that's where the story begins to fall apart. The engineers were so focused on acceleration that they underestimated the monster they were building. The Sport Wagon's long wheelbase and odd weight distribution, especially with its raised glass roof and rearward mass bias, made it unpredictable in corners. At highway speed, it felt stable, but throw it into a curve or a twisty back road, and the back end would swing with terrifying enthusiasm. Lift off the gas mid-turn and the tail could snap around without warning. Test drivers described it as weirdly floaty but brutally fast, with one engineer reportedly calling it a hearse with a rocket strapped to the roof. The rear coil springs, fine for hauling luggage and kids, couldn't cope with the torque this engine delivered. Buick tried firming the suspension, retuning the shocks, even moving the battery to the rear to balance weight, but the issues persisted. It simply wasn't stable enough to be safe at the speeds it could now achieve. Worse, corporate brass began to panic. The idea of a station wagon that could outrun most muscle cars clashed directly with GM's unwritten performance policies, and more importantly, with Buick's carefully crafted image. This wasn't a Grand National or a Firebird. It was a family car. A mom mobile with 400 horsepower was not going to fly. And so, the Buick Sport Wagon GS Stage 1 prototype was buried. It never made it to production. No showroom examples were built. The prototype itself, according to scattered accounts, was returned to Flint, where it may have been dismantled, rebadged as a test mule, or scrapped entirely. No photos have ever surfaced. No VIN has been confirmed. It lives on only in whispers. But the legend remained. Buick engineers who worked on the project remembered it fondly and fearfully. It was a beautiful disaster, a machine that didn't know what it wanted to be. It could smoke its rear tires with a flick of the throttle, gap a Camaro at a stoplight, and carry 5 kids and a dog to school the next morning. But in the wrong hands, or on the wrong road, it could become completely unhinged. As one anonymous Buick insider later said, it was a family hauler that terrorized the twisties until the twisties got their revenge. In the end, it was too much, too fast, too unstable, too weird. The 1968 Buick Sport Wagon GS Stage 1 prototype was Detroit's brief, brilliant, and slightly deranged attempt to build a muscle car in a father's disguise. It was never meant to exist, and perhaps it never should have. But for one strange moment, in the late 1960s, Buick tried to make the ultimate dad missile, and the world wasn't ready. Number 3. The 1982 Pontiac Safari SS Wagon Tri-Power prototype, a machine so out of place and so rebellious, it had to be destroyed and forgotten like it never existed. In the early 1960s, Pontiac was rising. Under the aggressive leadership of Bunky Knudsen and the engineering brilliance of John DeLorean, Pontiac was shedding its image as a staid, middle-aged brand and becoming something altogether more exciting. The Bonneville was booming, the Catalina was fierce, the GTO was waiting in the shadows, and performance was becoming Pontiac's new religion. But amid this muscle-bound revolution, there was an experiment, a strange one that flew directly in the face of logic and marketing, one that was never meant to reach the public eye. It began in 1962 with the Pontiac Safari, the full-size station wagon based on the Catalina. Like most wagons of the era, the Safari was designed for families, long trips, and quiet middle-class confidence. It was long, heavy, and beautifully detailed. Tail fins trimmed, chrome polished, with wraparound glass and room for 8. But someone inside Pontiac had a wild idea. What if, just what if, they built a performance version? Enter the Safari SS, a nickname whispered in internal memos and now nearly erased from official history. This wasn't a super sport in the Chevrolet sense. Pontiac never used SS officially, but within Pontiac's engineering and testing circles, the prototype became known as the Safari SS for its sinister mix of family form and hot rod fury. At its heart was the legendary 389 cubic inch V8, the same engine that would go on to power the first GTO just 2 years later. But this wasn't the mild 2-barrel grocery getter version. This prototype was equipped with Pontiac's Savage Tri-Power setup, 3 Rochester 2-barrel carburetors mounted in line on a special intake, delivering a thunderous 348 horsepower when the outer carbs kicked in under throttle. This engine was never meant for a station wagon. It was a muscle car heart transplanted into a family body. To make it handle the extra power, Pontiac engineers gave it the full factory performance suspension package: stiffer springs, a thicker front sway bar, upgraded shocks, and a limited slip rear differential. The prototype was also rumored to have a special close ratio 4-speed manual, though some reports insist it had a heavy-duty hydromatic automatic instead. Either way, it was built to go fast, not just cruise. And go fast it did, in a straight line. Floor it and the big wagon surged forward like a freight train coming off the rails. The tri-power system roared to life with that unmistakable growl, the carbs sucking air like an industrial turbine. It could torch the rear tires, shock unsuspecting muscle cars at red lights, and reach highway speeds faster than most drivers could process. But then came the corners. The handling was, in a word, terrifying. Despite the suspension upgrades, the sheer weight of the Safari, with its long wheelbase, rear overhang, and soft rear springs, turned every corner into an act of bravery. The nose dove under braking, the rear end wandered like a trailer, and mid-corner throttle made the rear tires light up with zero warning. It was a car that could outrun anything in a drag race, then nearly flip over on an exit ramp. Pontiac engineers, who were beginning to sharpen their skills on more serious performance projects, quickly realized the prototype was a contradiction. It was too powerful to be safe for the average family, too heavy and unstable to be taken seriously by performance purists, and too wild to be offered under the Pontiac badge without risking lawsuits or reputational damage. And so, the Safari SS prototype was quietly canceled. No press releases, no press cars, no brochures. The car was allegedly taken back to GM's test facility in Milford, Michigan, stripped of its tri-power system and possibly crushed. Others believe it was rebadged as a normal test wagon and quietly retired. No confirmed photos exist. No build sheets have ever surfaced. Every record was purged. It was as if Pontiac never dared to build such a thing at all. But among old engineers, the memory lingers. A few have spoken off the record. One recalled, "It was a missile in a church pew. Totally wrong, totally brilliant. But we had to kill it before it killed someone." Another simply laughed when asked about it. "You mean the Safari SS? Yeah, that wagon broke every rule. And then they erased the rules to cover it up." Today, the 1962 Pontiac Safari SS tri-power prototype lives only in whispers, a forbidden muscle wagon that challenged the laws of physics, branding, and common sense. A car that wasn't supposed to exist. So Pontiac made sure no one could prove it ever did. But the idea it represented? That never died. You can see its DNA in the GTO, in the 421 HO Catalinas, even in the later 455-powered Grand Safari wagons of the 70s. But the original? Number 4. The 1964 Buick Riviera Super Wildcat 425 convertible prototype, a rare moment when elegance collided violently with unfiltered power. By 1964, the Buick Riviera had already shaken the foundations of American automotive design. It was bold, crisp, and muscular, the spiritual answer to the four-seat Thunderbird in a statement of quiet aggression. With its sharply sculpted lines, hidden headlights, and Coke bottle silhouette, the Riviera didn't need tail fins or chrome excess to assert dominance. It was cool, confident, and unmistakably American. But buried deep inside GM's design and engineering corridors, a small group of Buick engineers had a problem. They loved the Riviera, but they wanted it to be terrifying. Their answer was the Super Wildcat 425 prototype convertible, a mechanical fever dream that nearly turned one of GM's most refined models into a factory hot rod, before Buick's upper management slammed the vault door shut and buried the whole affair in silence. The idea began innocently enough. The standard 1964 Riviera already came with a potent 425 cubic inch nailhead V8, a torque monster that churned out 340 HP in its basic form. But Buick had something even hotter in the back room. The Super Wildcat package, a rarely seen dual quad setup with twin Carter AFB 4-barrel carbs and a more aggressive camshaft profile, rated at 360 HP and 465 pound-feet of torque. This was brutal power for 1964, and it gave the Riviera the heart of a drag racer. Now imagine that engine crammed into a hand-built convertible Riviera prototype, built before GM ever officially offered such a configuration. The top was chopped. The rear deck was reinforced. The frame was strengthened, or at least that was the plan. On paper, it sounded like a dream, a high-speed, open-air grand tourer with presence and punch. But as the engineers soon discovered, torque doesn't read paper. The prototype was beautiful, sleek, low-slung, and tastefully badged. To the casual observer, it was just a more glamorous Riviera. But press the throttle and the car revealed its dark side. Early test mules with the Super Wildcat engine and performance gearing would light up the rear tires at half throttle. It wasn't a surge, it was a punch. A snap of motion that pinned passengers to the backrests and left tire smoke curling into the sky. On the test track, things went wrong fast. The Riviera's standard chassis, engineered for comfort and smooth delivery, simply wasn't prepared for what the dual quads could unleash. During full throttle runs, the immense torque twisted the convertible's frame, bending rails, flexing the floor pan, and snapping leaf springs. On one infamous run, a prototype reportedly launched so violently that the rear axle shifted, shattering a control arm and shearing off the drive shaft. Engineers watching from the sidelines went silent. What they had built wasn't a refined tourer. They had built a weapon, and that's when Buick executives stepped in. The very idea of a high-powered Riviera convertible had always been controversial. Buick was a luxury brand, not a dragstrip warrior. With this much power, the convertible became unpredictable, even dangerous. Add to that the high cost of production and fears of structural reliability. And the verdict came quickly. Shut it down. All test cars were ordered to be returned to stock specification or scrapped. The convertible project was shelved indefinitely. No Super Wildcat Riviera convertible would ever reach production. No brochures were printed, no records made public. Buick had flirted with building a monster and then erased the evidence. Some say 3 prototypes were built. Others insist only one ever ran with the full Super Wildcat setup. One former engineer years later described it like this: "We didn't just overpower the chassis, we scared ourselves. It was like watching a ballet dancer try to carry a piano." Another recalled seeing the bent frame of the test car in a Buick warehouse, twisted like someone had grabbed it and wrung it like a towel. And then, just like that, gone. Today, the 1964 Buick Riviera Super Wildcat convertible is a ghost. No surviving examples are known. No VINs have been confirmed. It was never cataloged, never offered, never even acknowledged in the press. But the rumors refuse to die. A few sharp-eyed collectors have spent decades chasing it, following whispers about a chopped convertible shell hidden in the back of a Michigan barn. Others claim a Super Wildcat engine with Riviera factory stampings once appeared at a swap meet, then vanished. But the truth remains sealed under layers of corporate silence. This was the car that Buick almost built, a convertible luxury coupe with more torque than its body could withstand, a machine that was too violent for its badge, too fast for its time, and too dangerous for the showroom. It was, in the words of one retired line worker. Number 5. The 1963 Chevrolet Biscayne SS stock eliminator prototype, a car that may have been the most dangerous threat the Corvette ever faced. And that's exactly why it had to die. In 1963, Chevrolet was at the peak of its powers. The Corvette Stingray had just debuted with its now iconic split rear window. The Impala was America's best-selling car. And lurking in the back, lots of drag strips across the country were legions of full-size Chevys stuffed with the mighty 409. A monster engine that had become a symbol of brute force wrapped in plain sheet metal. But something even more ferocious briefly existed in the shadows. A machine so fast, so unholy in its mission, that GM not only killed it, but tried to erase its very memory. That car was the 1963 Chevrolet Biscayne SS stock eliminator prototype. It started as an experiment by Chevy's Performance and Engineering Group. The idea was simple: take the lightest, barest full-size Chevrolet body, the no-frills Biscayne, and made it with the most powerful version of the 409 cubic inch big block V8, freshly tuned for NHRA stock eliminator class racing. This wasn't just some factory 409. This was the Z11 style variant with a dual 4-barrel intake, a solid lifter camshaft, high compression pistons, aluminum front end components, and 4.56 rear gears. A setup built for the quarter mile. The engine made a conservative 425 horsepower, but insiders said real output was closer to 460 plus. Mated to a heavy-duty close ratio, 4-speed, and a stripped-out interior, this was a factory hot rod hiding in janitor's clothes. The body was pure economy car. No trim, rubber floor mats, bench seats, no power anything, no radio, no insulation. The paint was thin, the chrome was minimal. The only indication that this wasn't your uncle's sleepy Biscayne was the SS badging. Added as a joke by engineers who knew what they were doing was sacrilege. On paper, it was nothing special. On the drag strip, it was apocalyptic. Test cars were clocked in the low 12-second range, running consistent 11.90s on slicks, and doing so with terrifying consistency. They were outrunning dual-quad 421 Pontiacs, hosing down 426 Max wedges, and, most dangerously of all, beating Corvettes. And that's where the trouble started. The Corvette was supposed to be Chevrolet's ultimate performance car. The halo product, the dream machine, the corporate sacred cow. But this stripped-down Biscayne, costing thousands less, was eating it alive in NHRA stock eliminator events. Whispers started to spread in the pits. You want to win stock? Forget the vet. Get a 409 Biscayne. One GM exec reportedly saw a prototype run at a private strip in Michigan and went pale. "What the hell have you built?" he asked an engineer. Their answer? "Just a working man's race car." It was the wrong answer. Soon after the project was shuttered, internal memos cited brand conflict and overlap with the Corvette marketing strategy. The few Biscayne SS test cars that had been built, some say 6, others say no more than 2, were dismantled. Their high-performance engines pulled and reassigned to Supersport Impalas or crushed outright. No photos were published, no press releases, not even a whisper in the sales brochures. It was a car that had proven too good, too fast, too honest, and it had to be thrown under bus. To this day, few concrete details remain. No production records, no surviving VINs verified. A few performance parts stamped XP or Z11 have shown up at auctions and swap meets, always with wild stories attached. One surviving Biscayne drag car, believed to be a clone, runs at nostalgia events. But the real prototypes are gone. Still, some GM historians and drag racers remember them. Quietly, reverently. One former NHRA tech inspector recalled, "They looked like delivery cars, but when they staged, God help the guy in the other lane." Another GM engineer, long retired, put it more bluntly, "It was the car Chevy built by accident and then buried on purpose because it embarrassed the wrong people." The 1963 Chevrolet Biscayne SS stock eliminator prototype was never about style. It was about speed. It was about cheating the hierarchy. The idea that power belonged only to the expensive, the glamorous, the elite. This car spit in that idea's face. It was a blue-collar assassin. But the world wasn't ready, and so it was killed, forgotten, uncelebrated, but not unloved. Because in the pits of memory, it still rumbles. The sleeper that ate the Corvette for lunch and vanished before dinner. Number 6, 1971 AMC Javelin SC360 convertible prototype, a muscle car that died because its body couldn't contain its own ambition. In 1901, American Motors Corporation was doing something no one expected, fighting back. AMC had long been the underdog of Detroit, dwarfed by the Big Three, and dismissed by many as a maker of safe, dull economy cars. But the late 60s changed everything. The AMX, the Rebel Machine, and the Hearst-backed SC-Bond Rambler had shown AMC could be fast, weird, and dangerous in the best possible way. And with the second-generation Javelin, introduced in 1971, AMC had a real muscle car. Long, yidai, aggressive with Coke bottle curves and Trans Am DNA. But buried in the company's small, underfunded skunk works was an even crazier idea. What if the already hot SC360, AMC's light, nimble response to big block Detroit monsters, could become a convertible? Thus was born one of the strangest and most ill-fated experiments in AMC history, the 1971 Javelin SC360 convertible prototype. This wasn't just a design sketch or a theoretical exercise. AMC actually built it. A small number of test mules, most say between 2 and 5, were converted from standard Javelin SC360 hardtops by cutting off the roof, reinforcing the rockers and subframe, and reworking the body structure to handle the forces of an open-top V8 performance car. And make no mistake, this was no soft cruiser. The prototype retained the 360 cubic inch 4-barrel V8, pumping out a healthy 285 horsepower, fed through a close ratio Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual with free-flowing exhaust manifolds, performance headers, and the factory Go package, which included upgraded suspension, handling package, and a 3.54 limited slip rear end. AMC even tested it against a CUDA convertible and beat it. Test drivers reportedly called it a rocket without a roof. On straight-line runs, the convertible SC360 could run the quarter mile in the low 14s, with Ardo 60 times in the high 5s. It was quick, raw, and utterly unfiltered, a screaming eagle in red, white, and blue. But it had a fatal flaw. Without the fixed roof to tie the unibody together, the chassis flexed like a rubber band, Despite welded-in subframe connectors, thicker rockers, and cross-bracing under the floor pan, the body twisted violently under acceleration and cornering loads, slammed the guy and the windshield frame shuddered, hit a bump at speed, and the doors creaked and misaligned. One prototype developed a visible crack near the cowl during high-speed testing, a catastrophic sign. AMC engineers pushed harder. They experimented with internal roll bracing, boxed floor pans, even structural foam injected into the pillars. But the body simply couldn't handle the torque of the 360 and the aggression of the Go package. The added weight of the reinforcements nullified performance gains. The open-air driving experience, so glorious in theory, became dangerous in reality. By mid-1971, AMC admitted defeat. The project was quietly scrapped. Every prototype was ordered destroyed. Some say they were melted down at AMC's Kenosha facility. Others believe one may have survived long enough to be used as a promotional show before it too was crushed. The convertible tooling that had been rushed into development was dismantled and unbuilt, piece by piece. AMC, already struggling financially, couldn't afford to let the public see an unsafe convertible, or worse, let one slip into private hands. And just like that, the Javelin SC360 convertible was gone. It never appeared in a brochure. No photographs were ever released. Even internal documentation is nearly non-existent. For years, muscle car historians didn't believe it existed at all, until whispers began to surface from retired AMC employees. Some still speak of it in hushed tones. One former test driver recalled, "It was quick, crazy quick. You'd get second gear scratch without trying. But the body twisted so much, I thought the shifter would snap off in my hand." Another AMC engineer, years after the fact, offered a grim summary. "We built a muscle car so powerful, it tore its own spine out." Today, the 1971 AMC Javelin SC360 convertible prototype is one of the great what-ifs of the muscle car era. It was a car that could have changed the perception of AMC forever. A bold, unapologetically American response to the Mustang and Camaro convertibles. A car that proved AMC could build not just strange muscle, but desirable muscle. But it was also a car that the laws of physics refused to tolerate. The unibody couldn't support the fantasy. The dream was too big for the structure that held it. And so AMC did what only the most terrified automakers do. They erased it. No fanfare, no photos, no museum examples, just molten steel and silence. This was a car that died not because it was slow or boring or ugly, but because cutting off its roof was the one rule it couldn't survive breaking. Number 7. The 1970 Ford Maverick Grabber 428 Cobra Jet prototype. A daring experiment that almost redefined what a muscle car could be, but was crushed before it had a chance to roar on the streets. In 1970, the muscle car landscape was evolving rapidly. The era of gigantic muscle machines was nearing its peak, but the public was increasingly drawn to smaller, more nimble vehicles that still packed serious performance. Ford, always eager to capture a slice of the market, looked toward the Maverick, a compact car originally conceived as an economical, practical alternative to the full-size family sedan. With its grabber package, the Maverick was given a sporty flair, distinctive paint schemes, rally stripes, special wheels, and a unique grille. But under the hood, the Grabber was no powerhouse. It was more style than substance, equipped with modest 6-cylinder or small V8 engines. But that didn't stop Ford's Special Vehicle Operations, SVO, the group behind the legendary Mustang Boss models and Cobra Jet muscle cars, from dreaming bigger. The engineers in SVO were fascinated by the Maverick's compact, lightweight chassis. What if they could shove the 428 Cobra Jet V8, Ford's legendary 7.0-liter big block engine, into the Maverick's engine bay? Could they build a mini Mustang, a car that combined the raw, unfiltered power of a big block muscle car with the nimble footprint of a compact? The idea was daring, almost reckless. The 428 Cobra Jet engine was a monster by any measure. Rated conservatively at 335 horsepower, but delivering an enormous 440-plus Eb-Ft of torque, this engine was built to dominate drag strips and highways alike. It had forged its reputation powering the legendary Mustang Boss 429 and the Torino Cobra. But the Maverick, it was never designed for such brutal force. The SVO engineers, hungry to push limits, began fitting prototype Maverick grabbers with the 428 Cobra jet. They reinforced engine mounts, upgraded cooling systems, and experimented with transmissions capable of handling the power. Primarily heavy-duty manual gearboxes and performance automatics. Initially, the car astonished onlookers and drivers alike. With that massive torque shoved into a compact frame, the Maverick was capable of lightning-quick launches that sent tires spinning furiously. However, the problems emerged almost immediately. The Maverick's relatively narrow front tires and modest suspension simply couldn't handle the engine's violent output. Severe torque steer, a phenomenon where the engine's twisting force causes the steering wheel to jerk abruptly left or right, made the car extremely difficult to control, especially during hard acceleration. Test drivers reported violent pulls at the wheel that required near superhuman effort to keep the car tracking straight. More concerning, the chassis itself showed signs of strain. The Maverick's frame, designed for lighter engines, flexed and twisted under the brutal torque load. The suspension components groaned under stress, and at freeway speeds, the car's instability became dangerous. Drivers occasionally lost control, narrowly avoiding crashes during high-speed testing. The combination of power, weight distribution, and insufficient chassis rigidity created a perfect storm of unpredictability. Despite attempts to stiffen the frame with subframe connectors, thicker sway bars, and reinforced mounts, the car remained uncontrollable in spirited driving. The enhancements added weight, sapping some of the precious power-to-weight advantage that made the idea so compelling. Ford's upper management quickly caught wind of these alarming test reports. The idea of a compact muscle car with big block power was enticing, but not at the cost of driver safety or brand reputation. The risk of accidents and liability claims was simply too high. Moreover, the Maverick with a 428 Cobra jet engine would have cannibalized sales from other Ford performance models, especially the Mustang and Torino, creating internal market conflict. Within months, the decision was made. The Maverick Grabber 428 Cobra jet prototype would never be allowed to see production. All existing prototypes were ordered destroyed. The tooling for any related parts was scrapped. The project was buried deep in Ford's vaults, a casualty of corporate caution triumphing over engineering bravado. Today, the 1970 Ford Maverick Grabber 428 Cobra jet prototype remains a near mythical footnote, known only through scarce internal documents, whispered anecdotes from former engineers, and rare photos of the test mules. It symbolizes both the bold, inventive spirit of the muscle car era and the harsh reality of engineering limits and safety concerns. It was, in essence, a wild pony bred for the drag strip, but not Main Street. A car whose soul was bigger than its body and whose fate was sealed by the unforgiving laws of physics and prudence. Number 8. The 1962 Pontiac Safari SS Wagon Tri-Power prototype, expanding on the history, engineering, cultural context, and ultimate fate. In the early 1960s, Pontiac was on the rise, fueled by visionary leaders like Bunky Doodson and John DeLorean, who sought to transform the brand from a staid, conservative division into a bold performance powerhouse. Their mission was to inject a sense of excitement, speed, and style into Pontiac's lineup, a goal that culminated famously in the birth of the GTO in 1964. But before that watershed moment, Pontiac was experimenting with various ways to infuse muscle into its existing models, including its family-oriented station wagons. The 1962 Pontiac Safari was a full-size wagon built on the Catalina platform, designed primarily for comfortable family transport. It was a handsome Italian-style vehicle with graceful lines, a spacious interior, and a reputation for reliability and elegance. Its mission was simple: be a practical family car with a touch of class. But the Pontiac engineers were restless. What if the Safari could also be fast? What if it could defy the stereotype of the slow, lumbering station wagon and become a muscle car on wheels? This question led to one of Pontiac's most secretive and ultimately doomed experiments, the creation of the Safari SS Wagon Tri-Power prototype. Under the hood of this singular test mule was no ordinary engine. Instead of the standard two-barrel carburetor, the prototype was equipped with Pontiac's famed 389 cubic inch V8 fitted with the tri-power setup, a trio of Rochester two-barrel carburetors arranged on a special intake manifold, designed to maximize airflow and fuel delivery. This configuration was capable of delivering a whopping 348 horsepower, a figure that was explosive for a full-size wagon in 1962. To complement the engine's firepower, the prototype also featured Pontiac's factory performance suspension package, which included heavy-duty springs, upgraded shocks, a thicker front sway bar, and a limited-slip rear differential. The idea was to tame the power just enough so the wagon could hold the road without falling apart. But despite these efforts, the results were far from ideal. The combination of the heavy, long-wheelbase Safari wagon and the brutal power of the tri-power 389 proved to be a mismatch. Test drivers reported that the wagon handled like a lead sled, ponderous and sluggish in corners, with a bulky feel that defied the aggressive powertrain. The upgraded suspension helped only marginally. The massive weight of the vehicle, combined with its high center of gravity and long overhangs, made it unwieldy and unsafe at higher speeds. The car's handling flaws weren't just inconvenient, they were dangerous. The massive torque could break the rear tires loose unexpectedly, especially when the driver eased off the throttle mid-corner. Braking distances were long, and the wagon's heavy body caused excessive body roll, making it prone to unpredictable movements on winding roads. The sheer inertia of the station wagon platform was at odds with the muscle car aspirations of the engineers. Pontiac's higher-ups took notice. While the idea of a high-performance station wagon was intriguing, even ahead of its time, the reality was sobering. The company's image was carefully curated to appeal to families and professionals who wanted refinement and reliability. Not a wild street racer disguised as a family hauler. More importantly, the liability concerns around such a powerful yet unstable vehicle were enormous. In an era before widespread safety regulations, Pontiac had to consider how this car might perform in real-world driving conditions. School zones, suburban streets, highways packed with families. The project was quietly killed. All records of the Safari SS wagon tri-power prototype were destroyed or classified, and the car itself vanished into obscurity. Some rumors say the sole prototype was crushed. Others whisper it was stripped and used for parts. Photographs, factory documents, or sales brochures never saw the light of day. It was as if Pontiac had never dared to build such a thing at all. Yet the legacy of this forbidden wagon lived on in the memories of engineers and insiders. To those who saw or drove it, the Safari SS was a paradox, a vehicle that shattered every rule about what a muscle car should be, yet one that ultimately failed to reconcile power with control. One anonymous Pontiac engineer later remarked, "It was like strapping a jet engine to a family station wagon and hoping it'd land smoothly. It didn't. It just scared the hell out of us." Another recalled, "We wanted to build a muscle car for the whole family, but physics said no." This prototype foreshadowed future attempts by American manufacturers to combine performance and practicality, later seen in the muscle wagons of the late 1960s and early 1970s. Number 9. The 1971 AMC Javelin SC360 convertible prototype. Capturing the car's story, engineering challenges, cultural context, and ultimate fate with depth and atmosphere. In the early 1970s, American Motors Corporation, AMC, was a small but fiercely determined player in the muscle car arena. Overshadowed by the big three automakers, Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler, AMC sought to make a mark by blending style, performance, and relative affordability. The Javelin, first introduced in 1968, was AMC's bold answer to the Mustang and Camaro, a long, aggressive pony car with sharp lines, a rumbling V8, and a growing reputation on the racetracks. By 1971, the Javelin had matured into its second generation and offered a variety of powerful engines, including the popular 360 cubic inch V8, rated at a robust 285 horsepower when equipped with the coveted Go package and close ratio 4-speed manual transmission. This setup made the Javelin SC360 a legitimate muscle car contender, capable of holding its own against more famous rivals. But AMC's engineers and enthusiasts wanted more. A convertible Javelin SC360, something rare and eye-catching, combining open-air freedom with big V8 performance. While AMC had previously offered the Javelin only as a hardtop or coupe, the idea of a convertible muscle car was tantalizing, especially as competitors like Ford and Chevrolet had convertible versions of their pony cars. With limited resources but plenty of passion, AMC's small but resourceful skunkworks set out to create the 1971 Javelin SC360 convertible prototype. This project was never officially sanctioned for mass production. It was a test bed, a proof of concept, a gamble made in hopes that a high-performance convertible could elevate AMC's muscle car credibility. The process began by cutting the roof off existing Javelin SC360 hardtops. Removing the unibody roof structure was no small feat. The Javelin's unibody frame, designed for rigidity and safety, depended heavily on the roof for structural strength. To compensate, engineers added reinforcements, welded-in subframe connectors, beefed-up rocker panels, and cross-bracing beneath the floor to reduce chassis flex. However, these reinforcements inevitably added weight, threatening to negate some of the performance benefits of the lightweight coupe design. Under the hood, the prototype retained the heart of the beast, the 360 cubic inch V8, equipped with performance headers and the factory's close-ratio Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual transmission. The car was ready to roar. On paper, it looked promising. The Javelin SC360 convertible prototype boasted the same spirited 285 horsepower as its hardtop sibling and promised an exhilarating open-air muscle experience. Test drivers were initially impressed by the engine's power and the gearbox's tight, precise shifts, but the open-top Javelin had a hidden enemy: chassis flex. Without the roof, the unibody structure was compromised. The car's body twisted and warped under the immense torque and cornering forces. Testers reported hearing creaks and groans from the chassis, doors that misaligned and rattled, and even visible cracks forming near the cowl and firewall. During spirited driving, the car exhibited unsettling behavior. Understeer gave way to unpredictable oversteer, and the lack of rigidity made high-speed stability elusive. Engineers experimented with additional bracing and structural foam injections, trying to lock the chassis down. Each attempt added weight, dulling the car's responsiveness. The balance between maintaining performance and ensuring safety became impossible to achieve with the budget and technology AMC had available. Financial pressures compounded the technical woes. AMC was already struggling as a small automaker competing against giants. Launching an expensive convertible variant requiring heavy structural modifications didn't make business sense. Moreover, the muscle car market was beginning to shift, with increasing insurance rates and looming emissions and safety regulations threatening the high-performance segment. In the end, AMC's management made a difficult decision. The Javelin SC360 convertible project was canceled. The tooling that had been hastily developed for a limited run was dismantled. Every prototype was ordered destroyed, melted down or crushed, erased from existence. AMC did not announce the project publicly, and for decades, its very existence was dismissed as rumor. Yet, those few prototypes and the engineers who worked on them left behind stories of a car that was thrilling to drive but fundamentally flawed. One test driver later recalled, "It was a beast, powerful, raw, and loud. You could feel the torque grab you by the collar. But the body flex? It was like driving a boat made of rubber. You prayed the frame wouldn't fold on you." Another AMC engineer summed up the tragedy. "We built a convertible muscle car that literally tore its own backbone out." Number 10. The 1971 AMC Javelin SC360 convertible prototype, expanding on the car's engineering challenges, cultural context, and ultimate fate. In the early 1970s, American Motors Corporation, AMC, was a small but scrappy player in the muscle car arena, desperately trying to carve out a niche in a market dominated by Detroit's Big Three. The Javelin, introduced in 1968, was AMC's answer to the Mustang and Camaro, a long, aggressive pony car with a rumbling V8 and a growing reputation on the racetracks. By 1971, the Javelin had matured into its second generation and offered potent engines like the 360 cubic inch V8, which, with the Go package and close ratio 4-speed, produced a respectable 285 horsepower. The Javelin SC360 was a legitimate muscle car capable of standing toe-to-toe with its more famous rivals. But AMC wanted more. With limited resources but abundant passion, their engineers and enthusiasts dreamed of an open-air muscle car, a convertible Javelin SC360 that could offer the visceral thrill of top-down driving paired with serious V8 power. Thus was born the 1971 AMC Javelin SC360 convertible prototype. The project was never officially greenlit for production. Instead, it was a skunkworks effort, a testbed created by cutting the roof off standard Javelin SC360 hardtops and reinforcing the chassis to compensate for the loss of structural rigidity. AMC's unibody design heavily relied on the roof for strength, so engineers welded in subframe connectors, thickened rocker panels, and added cross-bracing beneath the floor to reduce flex. Despite these efforts, the car's structure was fundamentally compromised. Under the hood sat the familiar 360 cubic inch V8, equipped with performance headers and mated to a close ratio Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual transmission, the same drivetrain that made the hardtop SC360 a capable performer. Initial tests showed the convertible was quick, powerful, and loud. The 360 engine growled with authority, and the 4-speed allowed spirited, precise shifts. Drivers reported thrilling acceleration and the intoxicating freedom of open-air driving. But beneath the excitement lay a critical flaw. Without the roof's support, the unibody twisted violently under torque and cornering forces. Testers heard the chassis creak and groan. Doors rattled and misaligned. Visible cracks appeared near the windshield frame and cowled during high-speed maneuvers. The flex compromised handling causing the car to feel unstable and unpredictable, especially in sharp turns or on uneven roads. AMC engineers experimented with extra reinforcements and structural foam injections, but each modification added weight, dulling the car's agility and performance gains. The balance between chassis stiffness, weight, and power was impossible to achieve within AMC's budget and timeline. At the same time, AMC faced mounting financial pressures in a shifting market landscape. Insurance rates for muscle cars were rising, and new safety and emissions regulations loomed. The risk of releasing a convertible with compromised structural integrity was too great. Management pulled the plug. The tooling hastily created for the convertible was dismantled. All prototypes were ordered destroyed, scrapped, or melted down. The project was buried without fanfare or public announcement. Today, the 1971 AMC Javelin SC360 convertible prototype lives only in whispered legends and faded memories. It symbolizes AMC's scrappy ambition to challenge Detroit's giants and create a muscle car that combines style, power, and open-air freedom, but also the harsh realities of engineering limits in business realities. As one former test driver recalled, it was a wild ride, fast and raw, but the body flexed like crazy. You'd think the car was going to fall apart. And an AMC engineer summed it up. We built a convertible muscle car that literally tore its own backbone out. The dream was there, but the chassis wasn't. The Javelin SC360 convertible remains a fascinating what-if, a muscle car whose roof costed its life, lost to history but never forgotten by those who remember its brief, rebellious roar. Number 11. In the sprawling, glamorous world of early 1960s American luxury automobiles, Cadillac was already a symbol of prestige, innovation, and unmatched craftsmanship. Among its crown jewels, the Eldorado Seville stood out as a model that blended Italian-inspired design finesse with the grandeur and comfort that Cadillac buyers expected. But hidden beneath this elegant exterior was a lesser-known chapter of daring engineering, a secret prototype that almost transformed the Seville into a performance powerhouse, a car that could have been a luxury rocket in its own right. This was the 1960 Cadillac Eldorado Seville R5 dual-quad prototype, a singular hush-hush test mule equipped with Cadillac's R5 package, featuring twin 4-barrel carburetors bolted onto the already mighty 390 cubic inch V8 engine. The idea was ambitious and bold, to inject raw performance into a luxury coupe known more for its smooth ride and stylish presence than for its speed or aggressive power delivery. The R5 package was no simple upgrade. It meant outfitting the engine with dual Rochester 4-barrel carburetors, designed to maximize airflow and fuel delivery, promising explosive throttle response, and a noticeable leap in horsepower and torque. Complementing this fire-breathing engine was a heavy-duty cooling system necessary to keep the beast running smoothly under demanding conditions, and stiffer suspension springs aimed at improving handling and stability, a nod toward performance driving rarely associated with Cadillac's flagship luxury coupe. Behind closed doors at Cadillac's engineering division, the prototype was pushed hard. Test drivers took it out on winding roads and controlled tracks, gauging how the Seville's refined chassis would cope with the sudden infusion of muscle. The results were eye-opening. Performance was surprisingly spirited for such a large and luxurious car. The dual-carb setup gave the engine a potent, aggressive throttle response that turned the Eldorado Seville into something closer to a grand touring sports coupe rather than just a stately luxury cruiser. Acceleration times improved, and the engine's growl was deeper and more commanding. The upgraded cooling and suspension systems helped keep the car composed at higher speeds. But beneath the excitement lay a critical and ultimately fatal problem: heat and vibration. The Seville's engine bay was notoriously tight, a masterpiece of styling that prioritized sleek design over mechanical spaciousness. When the massive 390 V8 was pushed to its limits with the dual carburetors feeding it, the resulting heat buildup was intense and concentrated in a small space. The heavy-duty cooling system did what it could, but engineers soon found that heat soaked into nearby components, causing premature wear, wiring failures, and even safety concerns. More alarming was the vibration. The added power, coupled with the tight confines of the engine bay, caused pronounced shaking and resonance throughout the front end. This vibration not only compromised driver comfort, a core tenet of Cadillac's luxury appeal, but also raised serious questions about long-term durability. Components rattled loose, fasteners shook apart, and the engineers realized that the Seville's elegant design simply wasn't engineered to handle this kind of raw, sustained mechanical aggression. Faced with these challenges, Cadillac executives made a hard call. Despite the promising performance and the tantalizing prospect of marketing a luxury rocket, the risks were too high. The heat and vibration issues were not easily fixable without a costly and comprehensive redesign of the engine bay and chassis, changes that would delay production and dramatically increase costs. The project was quietly shelved. The lone prototype was mothballed, locked away in a dark corner of the testing facility, and eventually scrapped, destroyed to avoid any leaks or public speculation. No press release, no fanfare. It was as if the R5 dual-quad Eldorado Seville never existed. Today, this forgotten prototype remains an intriguing footnote in Cadillac's history, a glimpse of what might have been had engineering constraints not clipped its wings. It symbolizes the tension between luxury and performance, elegance and raw power. A reminder that even the most sophisticated automakers sometimes dream of wild, untamed speed, only to be humbled by the practical limits of design. As one former Cadillac engineer once reflected in a rare interview, "We wanted to build a car that was both a palace and a racehorse. The Eldorado Seville R5 was supposed to be our luxury rocket, but the heat and shake tore that dream apart. The body couldn't handle the fire we tried to put inside it." In retrospect, the 1960 Cadillac Eldorado Seville R5 dual-quad prototype was a brave experiment, a car ahead of its time that dared to blend high-class refinement with muscle car spirit. It remains a fascinating what-if. Number 12. The 1970 Ford Maverick Grabber 428 Cobra Jet prototype. Here is a much longer, immersive account. In the golden age of American muscle cars, 1970 marked the era where horsepower wars raged fiercest, and automakers scrambled to extract every last ounce of power from their engines. Yet the landscape was shifting. Rising insurance premiums, emissions regulations, and changing buyer tastes pressured manufacturers to innovate or risk extinction. Among the many ambitious projects secretly pursued by Ford's Special Vehicle Operations (SVO) division was a wild experiment that tried to blend raw big block power with compact agility. The 1970 Ford Maverick Grabber 428 Cobra Jet prototype. The Maverick itself was Ford's entry into the compact car market, designed initially for economy and practicality. Its grabber trim, added in 1969, injected some sporty flair, bold paint schemes, racing stripes, unique badging, and a beefed-up suspension. But under the hood, the grabber was largely a modest performer, usually equipped with inline sixes or small V8s. Still, the idea of creating a mini Mustang, a pocket-sized muscle car packing big block power, tantalized engineers and performance enthusiasts alike. Ford's SVO saw an opportunity to create something unprecedented. Drop the mighty 428 Cobra jet engine, a 7.0-liter big block V8 renowned for its raw grunt and drag strip dominance, into the lightweight Maverick grabber. The result would be a ferocious little street machine, capable of surprising muscle car fans everywhere. They took a stock Maverick grabber, stripped it down to bare essentials, and dropped in the 428 Cobra jet engine, complete with a heavy-duty cooling system, reinforced motor mounts, and a performance transmission. The car instantly transformed from a mild-mannered compact into a fire-breathing beast. Early test runs revealed the Maverick 428 prototype was both exhilarating and terrifying. The engine's massive torque sent the narrow tires into violent wheel spin at launch. Acceleration was blistering, but the brutal power caused severe torque steer, a violent pull at the steering wheel that made control difficult. At freeway speeds, the car's narrow front track and less than stout suspension couldn't tame the engine's fury. Test drivers recounted episodes of near loss of control as the car bucked and danced unpredictably under acceleration. The Maverick's chassis, never designed for such immense power, twisted and flexed alarmingly. The rear suspension struggled to keep the tires planted, and the front end's geometry shifted under load. The result was a car that felt more like a wild stallion on a rough trail than a disciplined road machine. Despite modifications, reinforced subframes, stiffer springs, and upgraded shocks, the basic problem remained. The Maverick grabber's compact platform was simply too fragile to safely harness the Cobra jet's power. Ford's executives, watching test reports and hearing from engineers, faced a stark decision. The prototype was undeniably quick, but its uncontrollable nature and dangerous handling made it a liability. Worse, the car's market position would compete directly against Ford's successful Mustang line, potentially undermining a more important product. Within months, the Maverick 428 Cobra jet prototype was shelved. All known test cars were ordered destroyed, crushed to ensure none would reach the public or inspire further development. The tooling and parts for the project were scrapped, and any documentation buried in Ford's archives. The project remains a whispered legend, a glimpse of what might have been if the era's engineering limits had been stretched just a little further. The Maverick Grabber 428 Cobra Jet prototype was a wild pony bred for the drag strip, not Main Street, a car too violent, too raw, and too unmanageable for everyday driving. Today, the Maverick 428 is a ghost story told among muscle car aficionados, a reminder that in the pursuit of raw power, sometimes engineering reality bites hard, and the most thrilling ideas never leave the shop floor.